What is significant here is that not only are these false color images of the planets, starting with the gas giant outer planets, the same colors as these lens filters, camera lenses, digital imaging chips, and so forth. Now, I do not know exactly what the significance of what I am showing you is, but the geochemical and atmospheric chemical composition of the planets, including the gas giant planets, are more or less identical to the chemical composition of this lens equipment, filters, digital imaging chips, and so forth. And I presume the same proportion of chemicals exist in these technologies compared to the planets. Here are some more examples, like these methane band filters. They've recently discovered methane on Mars. Now, I don't know if Mars is a lens, but everything falls into place like a jigsaw puzzle when we consider these comparisons. What is significant here is that the planets with atmospheres, the atmospheres contain methane. Methane absorbs ultraviolet and infrared radiation, I believe, just like this lens filter equipment, digital chip equipment, and so forth. Now, the true color and false color images of the planets that you see were taken with the types of lens equipment, camera equipment, and digital imaging chip equipment that we see. So what is going on here is that we are, as a race, observing the universe through telescopes, including satellite telescopes, ground-based telescopes, plus the cameras and sensors in space probes that have been exploring the solar system. So humans are imaging the universe using the same technology that the universe is imaging the universe with. The geochemical and atmospheric composition of the planets in our solar system are mere images of these technologies that you see here. Now, here are some proximity sensors, and bearing in mind that the gas giant outer planets and most of the inner planets produce an electromagnetic field, the planets are in part proximity sensors. I think solar systems sense any life form that evolves in the solar system, and solar systems are also set up as sensors to detect when these life forms become technologically sophisticated enough to leave their home planet. I think planets that evolve life inside the solar systems automatically become objects of study inside their respective solar systems, maybe even objects of manipulation. But I think each and every color of the planet has something to do with the colors of these sensor types here. And this falls into the same category as the sizes of the planets. They roughly correspond to the sizes of digital sensor chips, camera lenses, Not just the sizes, but the colors as well, including hyperspectral and multispectral camera equipment, lens equipment, filters. The solar systems could be any of these technologies that you see here. I think the planets in the solar systems are the equivalent of labs on chips like these here. Let us start by examining the Earth as if it were flat, as we compare the geological and geochemical structure and composition of the Earth's layers to the structure and chemical composition of the layers of these digital computer chips, biosensor chips, and imaging chips, plus other technologies that are layered like the Earth, not to mention the other planets and moons, with the Earth being the only example I will use. These technologies are also more or less chemically identical to the Earth, the planets, and the moons, with relatively equal proportions of metals, oxides, polymers, and the rest of the elements that are used in the production of digital, electronic, and optical equipment of any kind, of the type you are seeing in this video. This would include magnetic and optical biosensing and imaging and microscope and computer equipment, including this equipment's respective sensor chips and lenses and discs and other technologies, including fusions of these technologies in some cases, all of which are layered like the Earth's crusts, as well as made of many of the same elements as the Earth's crust and core, and vice versa. The purpose of this video is to convince you that the Earth and the rest of the solar system and our universe is pure technology, and so are we. This long and growing list of similarities between Mother Nature and technology would include photography, film of all kinds, of which there is a wide variety, with their layers organized like the layers of the Earth, including black and white film, X-ray film, and other types of film. These types of film are made with silicone-based polymers that are embedded with nanoparticles that are supersensitive to various light waves, and the planets and the moons are in part polymeric silicone, and so are we, by the way, with trace amounts of silicone in our bodies. And we are always being bombarded by UV rays from the sun and the stars, and cosmic rays from the stars at large. A new type of film on the market I recently encountered is called quantum film, which is being merged with CMOS digital imaging chips of the type we have already seen. Quantum film uses extremely photosensitive, colorful nanoparticles called quantum dots that are embedded in the polymers of this film, the chemical composition of which I can't find yet on the internet, but I'll bet it is made with many of the same elements, or the derivatives thereof, that are abundant in the geochemical composition of the Earth and the rest of the planets and moons. And in this example here, quantum film is used in tandem with a CMOS chip, on which the quantum dots that make up this quantum film are the colorful dots you see. Quantum dots are semiconductor nanoparticle crystals, sometimes called synthetic atoms, that are in part made of silicon, as well as photoluminescent elements, including sulfur and phosphorus, I think, plus other elements which exist in trace amounts in our bodies. This concept brings us to my hypothesis that our bodies, or the molecules therein, are the equivalent of silicon-based quantum dots, especially when we factor in the colorful electromagnetic fields / auras generated by the electrochemical reactions in our bodies. This in part means that the Earth itself is some kind of biological imaging and sensing device and display screen all rolled into one, or something to this effect. This hypothesis is supported by the fact that these quantum dots are sandwiched between the film layers that we see, just like all life on Earth is sandwiched between the Earth's crust and atmosphere. So if indeed our bodies and the molecules therein are some kind of quantum dots, this means that the Earth is some kind of high-resolution biological imaging and flat screen display, but round, plus other optical equipment. The Earth and our auras, it seems, are part of a high-resolution biological imaging and display device based on quantum dot technology, with our bodies or the atoms therein serving as the equivalent of quantum dots, as well as specimens in some kind of biological imaging system we call the Earth and the rest of the solar system. Earth is also some kind of data storage medium, and we are information on this medium or this chip. And with Earth being the only example I will use, it seems the Earth is in part a CMOS digital imaging semiconductor chip merged with what is called a microfluidic lab on a chip, which is a chip-sized mini biological sensor for microscopic analysis of cells and DNA. The same elements these chips are made of probably exist in the same proportion in the inner planets like Earth. The Earth is in part, and more specifically, I think, a spherical microfluidic lab-on-a-chip biosensor of some kind, with some kind of built-in camera lens, kind of like these examples. Over 70% of the Earth is also covered with water, which is consistent with my Earth as a microfluidic biosensor theory. The Earth and the rest of the planets and moons are not cotton candy floating in space like meaningless rocks and dirt. Let us not play games, and let us focus on the interior Earth compared to ourselves. We are being analyzed and scanned, I think, from the interior of the Earth. Not unlike this lab-on-chip platform that we see here. If the Earth were flat, the Earth could be any of these technologies we see here. And when we bring in the sun, this changes the equation to what is called optical fluidics or optofluidics or something to that effect. And this includes a lab-on-chip platform. The internal and external structure and dynamics of the Earth relative to the sun and the moon is a mere image of these technologies that we are looking at here. But because the Earth is round and not flat, then the Earth is some kind of spherical laboratory on a chip. Spherical lab-on-chip keywords. Some of these devices are called laboratory-on-chip microsphere biosensors and are based on a sensing technique called cavity-enhanced spectrography and sensing, I believe, with the sun and the moon playing their respective roles as light emitting or laser diodes and optical pickup units, sensors, and so forth. But they are just another set of tools used by doctors and scientists to detect and analyze cells, DNA, nanoparticles, and other matter at the microscopic level using the forces of light as analytics, excitation, and manipulation agents. Some of these microsphere biosensors are specifically referred to as optical and or dielectric and or magnetic microsphere spectroscopes, and the dynamics of these devices are near mirror images of the electromagnetic relationships between the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, and the electromagnetic relationship among the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun, especially with regard to the twin forces of light and magnetism, respectively, are more or less identical to the relationship of laser emitters and optical sensors relative to the target specimens inside these optical and or magnetic biosensor resonator spectroscopes. And some of these microsphere biosensors are also constructed in layers, just like the Earth is layered, as well as made of the same elements as these microsphere biosensors that you see. These microsphere biosensors rely on a biological sensing technique called optical and or magnetic resonance and light scattering, which are dynamics that play out in Earth's atmosphere and elsewhere in relation to the Sun, with light scattering dynamics between the Sun and the Earth being the same exact language used to describe the light scattering biosensing spectrography technique called Raman and fluorescence scattering, including Rayleigh and fluorescence scattering, plus other types of spectrography. These microsphere biosensors use optical fibers as what are called waveguides, whereas Earth's Schumann resonance field also acts as a waveguide and the equivalent of a resonance cavity, not unlike these examples here with the optical waveguide for this dielectric optical microsphere biosensor. What we have here is a scenario in which the dynamics and language of microsphere biosensor physics and the physics of earth science are bleeding into each other. This includes words like magnetic and optical resonance and Raman and Rayleigh scattering, fluorescence interactions and absorption, waveguides, resonance cavities, bandwidth, dielectric spheres, electromagnetic fields, and so forth. The fusion of the dynamics and language of biosensor physics and earth physics extends to radio physics as well, because it seems that the Earth and the other living planets and moons are spherical dielectric antennas of some kind, like these here, with their respective signal feeds and focal points and waveguides and so forth in just the right place relative to the position of the Sun. In a dynamic, that means that the Earth is a fusion of spherical biosensor technology and spherical antenna technology. Key words here are dielectric microsphere biosensors, dielectric spherical antennas, which all utilize the same types of electromagnetic fields in addition to being spherical as far as what they have in common. And I am aware that I am playing it fast and loose with these concepts, but there's really no eloquent way for me to present this or organize this information, in part because I really don't know what I'm doing. I have a degree in the social sciences. My first major was physics, but I flunked out of physics. One of the reasons we don't recognize the universe as technology is because the bits and pieces of the universe are so large and abstract and obscured, and most people have never even seen a lot of these technologies, let alone the internal structures of these technologies we are comparing to Mother Nature. And here are a few pictures of the layers of a patch antenna compared to the layers of the Earth to help make my point that there are no two ways about the fact that the Earth is in part an antenna of some kind, as well as the other planets and even the Sun itself, all of which are doing the same thing as antennas, just like these spherical antennas you see here. This might even include what are called hemispherical satellite antennas, which half resemble the structure of the outer gas giant planets of Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune with their ring structures, all of which are electromagnetically active, with the Sun playing its role as some kind of plasma antenna, which use ionized gas as opposed to metal elements. With the suns and planets and moons, including those in our solar system, arranged exactly like the elements in an Archimedes spiral antenna, with the elements arranged inside, like these examples here. And where it gets tricky here is that the sun and planets and moons in our galaxy are also arranged like cells in these spiral biosensor lab-on-chip devices, with the black hole at the center of our Milky Way in just the right place to serve as the equivalent of the inlet, with the planets and moons and suns and other matter in our Milky Way being pulled into black holes, in addition to moving through the rings of our Milky Way galaxy like cells through the rings of these lab-on-chip biosensors. I am going to start wrapping this video up by saying that the galaxies are fusions of technology, biosensor technology, antenna technology, and other technologies. The similarities between the spiral galaxies and these spiral technologies that I am showing you are too similar, I believe, to be coincidental, especially when we consider that the dynamics of these spiral technologies and spiral galaxies are the same, more or less. What is interesting is that scientists and doctors have recently invented centrifugal microfluidic disks that are merged with spherical biosensor microspheres like those you see here. This fusion of technology has produced a little sensor inside of a big sensor, a little machine inside of a big machine, inside the gigantic machine of our cybernetic universe. There is also a theory out there called fluid universe theory, and this is consistent with my theory that the Milky Way galaxy and other spiral galaxies are some kind of centrifugal microfluidic biodisks. Spiral galaxies also spin at millions of miles a minute, essentially, and biodisks spin at in between hundreds of RPMs a minute and thousands of RPMs a minute. If you like this video, give it the thumbs up and subscribe. And if you have subscribed, thank you for subscribing, and share this video. I would kind of like to get the word out before, I buy the farm or something. But I have other videos out there under Cybernetic Universe.